press the bell icon on the YouTube app to never miss a video from Newslaundry.
This is a Newslaundry podcast and you're listening to Highway on my podcast with Rocky, Mayur and Abhinandan.
We're back!
We're hungry!
And we are here with the two biggest men in Indian food and travel, Rocky and Mayur. I'm Abhinandan Sekhri. In case you're wondering why Prashant isn't here, because Prashant didn't come for the Northeast schedule, which was a very long schedule, and he hated to stay away from his family all that time. And Rocky,
while we're on the subject of the biggest men in Indian food, I claim that title for myself. And even though I'm big enough to be two men, at 126 kilos, which was just weighed this morning fresh, I am the biggest name in Indian food. Well, not the biggest name actually. That would be a longer one. My name is quite short, but I'm the biggest guy in Indian food. If you know anybody else who's more than 126 kilos in Indian food, please speak up now or forever hold your peace or pieces.
Well, we shall get that down to 100 before we head out to the road again. I promise you that once this lockdown is over. And like I was saying, Rocky and Mayur's family were more than happy to have them gone for 27-day schedule, the first one, which is a long one. And Prashant wasn't there for it. So we are taking you to Nagaland because when you can't get to the highway, we will bring the highway to you through Highway on my podcast, where we take you around the country and we will also take you overseas, one state at a time. So Mayur, Nagaland was, I'm guessing, a struggle, or I'm playing up to stereotypes, but I do recall it was a struggle for the vegetarian.
Yes, it is. I mean, Nagaland is very heavily forested. They have hills, so they have a lot of produce. However, they also have this habit of trying to make all their food really pungent and strong the way they like it. So they'll always find something to put in there, even in the vegetarian dishes. And it's primarily akhuni, which they use, which is the fermented soybean paste. They're very happy to ladle that into everything. And they have another thing called anishi, which is the fermented yam. So all this fermentation, even if you've got like nice fresh vegetables, once you put all that in the soup, if you're not used to strong aromas and flavors, it is a challenge. And I remember it was always a challenge.
और हमारा मीर बड़ा gentle है, वो पनीर जैसी blend चीजें खा के खुश हो जाता है. Now before we get to Rocky, who tells us the varieties of meat, and we won't give it away all at once, Rocky, the drive to Nagaland was beautiful. That is all I remember. The food, Rocky, please tell us.
The reason why people in Nagaland prefer to have very pungent food, taking up from where Mayur left off, and I'm guessing this is the reason, is because the great warrior hill tribes of Nagaland were always at war with each other or anybody else they could find. And the warriors lived off the land. So they would come off the tribal sort of strongholds high up in the mountains, come down to the plains, to the low-lying areas to hunt and take the food back for the tribes. And typically this would mean cutting meat, killing animals, cutting meat, stuffing it into bamboo, covering it with clay, and then keeping it for days on end, and then carrying it all back in one go after a week or 10-day hunting trip, which meant that the taste of fermented food or the taste of matured food or really gamey food sort of became really popular with everybody. And that's what the taste that they look for in everything. So they need that really strong taste from their food, which is the reason why I'm guessing is why they have such pungent food that almost nobody else in the country can handle except the Nagas.
So we'll come back to the food. We went to this market where you could buy everything from hamster to rabbit to worms to bee larvae. Those will be all part of the newsletter. We have photographs of that. In fact, the variety of photographs we have of foods from Nagaland, we should, talk about.
There were no hamsters. There are no hamsters in it. No.
What were those? But those rabbits, those little round furry things.
Hamburgers.
It's some kind of large rodent that they find in the forest. It wasn't hamsters.
मैंने सोचा hamster थे. hamster. इसको hamburger, यहाँ पर hamburger इसको कहता है. But in many other parts of the country, meats that are illegal are not illegal in Nagaland. Although there's no written rule, because culturally, it's been a part of their practice. In fact, we also had dog meat. I don't remember if Rocky, you tried it, but I remember it was a struggle, and I tried to convince you that for the camera you should try it. But I will just say this on the cultural aspect of Nagaland, and this is true for much of the Northeast. I was amazed at the Western influence in Nagaland, and even parts of Meghalaya and others, is way more than any Indian influence. I mean, the music scene there, like you walk into the smallest of cafe in Nagaland, which seats like 10 people. The guys there, the waiters there will know, Def Leppard, they'll know the Eagles, they'll know the history of certain music. And I'm like, I think this is a sign that India kind of really cut off much of the Northeast, because the influences there of overseas countries are way more than any India influence or the rest of India influence. Like, I'm half Tamil. I have Tamilian relatives who play bloody Daler Mehndi at their weddings. And of course, the older generation hits their head that Punjab has even reached, a nice Tambram wedding is bloody dancing to Ho Gayi. And it has kind of permeated. But this part, none of your Punjabi pop, none of your Hindi Bollywood, I find that fascinating. And I wonder why.
They love their rock, though. You're right. I mean, if you remember when we were there for the Hornbill Festival, it's also really well known for that competition that they have, the music festival. And then the last night we went there and we went backstage where all the bands and all were performing. It was also some very talented hard rock and heavy metal musicians and bands coming out of Nagaland. Yeah?
And even rock and roll from Rocky's time. I mean, they're really well versed in that also. Uncle, आपके ज़माने का भी काफी वहाँ झंडा ऊपर है. But उसके बारे में बताइए.
Rock and roll music from 2004. That is so cool.
But did finally end up eating dog, right? I mean,
we've jumped several subjects, so I don't know which one to start with first. Should we go with the Naga Bazaar or should we go with the Western influence on the music?
Whatever you feel like.
I think let's get the Western influence out of the way, then we'll go into Naga Bazaar, because then it's very difficult to come out of there.
I think Nagamese is the language that the Nagas sort of speak to each other in. Otherwise, each tribe had its own different language, which they wouldn't understand each other. And the only unifying factor for all of them was the Christian missionaries who sort of went into Nagaland and encouraged people to follow the Christian faith. Now, you can't, if you know even one Naga person, you can't push them around. And you got to love that about them. A true warrior people, the men, the women, they have a mind of their own and they know what they want and they go out there and they get it. So I think the Christian missionaries' influence and the sort of widespread use of English as a unifying language led this whole music revolution for English. And the Nagas have always been a very musical people. They've loved music. I mean, it flows in their blood. So that sort of gets down. So, I remember once we got invited to a minister's home in the evening for a barbecue, and we went down there, and the average age must have been 60 plus, but they were all strumming their guitars, playing their drums, singing. There was mouth organs. I mean, it was fantastic to see. It was like a little band that was going, and people were just having a great time while cooking and playing their own music. So music is just everywhere. They love it.
Yeah. And so are chilies, but we'll come to Chili's later. When we went, okay, let's enter Nagaland. Let's get that Manipuri hotel out of the way. Then we'll go to the Naga Bazaar, which is the most exotic piece.
Yeah.
So, Rocky, Mayur, tell us. We just at the border of Nagaland, and there are photographs of that border, which we will send you as part of the newsletter. You can subscribe to the newsletter by clicking on the link, which is below this podcast, whatever podcast platform you listen to us on. There's a link. You click on the link, it'll open out a form, and you can fill out your details. You'll get the newsletter, which has visual references, photographs from our trips to Nagaland, which have been several. And you can also write to us at homp2020@gmail.com. That is HOMP2020@gmail.com with your stories, with your food experiences, and we'll also add you to the newsletter team. Rocky, Mayur. So just as we entered, there was this very remarkable, excitable man.
Yeah. It's like when you enter Nagaland, I remember the beautiful, the wooden sculpture. It's like the giant wooden doorway almost, which is above the highway, beautifully carved to resemble their traditional homes, the Morungs. And then when we entered in a little further in, there was a whole row of Manipuri rice hotels. We picked it, we should have known. And there was, what's the name of the guy there? Anand, was it?
I don't remember his name.
He was a young Manipuri chap, completely nuts. First, he didn't want to serve us food. Then when we went in the back and they had this really basic kitchen set up with just an earthen oven. And then he was opening different things and showing and saying, what is this? It's chicken water. And Rocky was like, chicken soup. And then he had chicken legs. And then he was cooking a whole bunch of
and he was a one-man show with one khalasi with him. That's it.
Yeah.
No, he also had a
wife,
Mrs. Anand there, who was the only one who encouraged him to give us food by beating him around his head. Because he refused to serve us. And I was like, how many customers have you had today? And he was like, 1. And we were like 10 of us who wanted to eat. And he was like, no food. It's closed now. It's 2 o'clock. And then Mrs. Anand came out and, of course, beat him around and dragged him all over the place, which is when he realized that business needs to make money and serve people. So he started cooking and he was not happy. He was not happy with all of us. Yeah.
No. he appeared drunk to me. I don't know. It was very...
Murgi ka pani, I remember. He said, Murgi ka pani piyo. Or chicken. No, he calmed down by the end of it. He was laughing.
Yeah. But he
made us sing songs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
He was making the most of a bad situation. But I think we should leave the food for Manipur for when we go into Manipur, because there's scarce little that we know of Manipuri food. But yeah, let's just say the food was exciting. It was Manipuri. It was a lot of fun. But Mr. Anand took the cake as far as that shoot was concerned. He was also teaching us how to pronounce everything correctly in Manipuri accents, which we were quite bad at. And short of beating us like Mrs. Anand was beating him, he did everything else to encourage us.
Then we went to a bunch of towns, which I'm sure Mayur will remember. The Hathi ka appetite and the Hathi ki memory will tell us the names. But the Naga Bazaar was in Kohima, if I'm not wrong.
The Naga Bazaar was in Kohima. It was.
Those are the most dramatic photographs from all our trips there. And of course, our last and final trip where that huge bowl of cooked pupa and caterpillars was like gross. I don't even know how Rocky ate that. But Rocky, we finally did order a dog at one point, right? Or we didn't, I don't recall, because you refused to eat dog or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't refuse to eat it. I just didn't want to eat it because, it's sort of...
But you have a dog at home.
Doesn't really appeal to me. Yeah. But I did take a bite at a restaurant, and it was a little tough and it was a little gamey and it was really nothing to write home about. So in the spirit of giving everything a chance, I did take a bite of the dog and it wasn't good. But when they butcher it and they keep it outside and they keep whole parts of it outside, that's sort of difficult for me to look at, because I'm a dog person. I'm sure if I kept chickens at home and I loved them, I probably wouldn't eat too much chicken either. After all, I have a family.
I think you're giving yourself way more sentimental credit.
I have a family and I don't eat humans at all, ever.
So last time everybody in the family checked, all the digits were there. There was no problem. But listen, I remember we remarked on this that night, the first night. We got in at night through all those little narrow lanes and we found this hotel that we were staying at. And all of us remarked about the fact that when we were driving up there, there was absolutely no bird song. And it was the first place we visited on Highway on My Plate or any of the places we stayed where there is at night no sounds of street dogs barking or anything, man. It's like the dogs also knew. They're like, we bark, we'll be on the menu. Keep quiet, stay hidden.
Yeah, I remember remarking on that. In spite of such lush green cover, there was no bird song. But it's a beautiful place. I will say it's stunning, spectacular in its visual. But from the first time we went there to the last time we went there, there weren't any big hotels. In fact, we ate at the restaurant with this really cool, trendy guy with boots and that specs. He was supposed to be one of the cool dudes of Kohima. And to the last time we went, there was like 2 big hotels where one we ate at. Correct. But even though there was that kind of development, at least the last time I went, there's still nobody there. It seems like, maybe we're just too used to the crowds of Delhi or Kerala or wherever we go, Rajasthan, Jaipur, Jodhpur. There it's like nothing. Yeah, there's like this big hotel with like us in the lobby and nobody else.
Oh, it's brilliant. I think this is something that we discussed there on more than one occasion, is how there is absolutely no class and no caste and no differentiation in society. So when you're driving and you stop somewhere at a restaurant to eat, everybody just, the driver or your guide who would sort of in most of India, there would be 2 very different classes of people. We'd all just come and sit down on the table and you all enjoy a meal together, which is how it should be. I mean, we are probably an exception because we have always done that. We have always sat together as a group, as a 10-man group, and we've eaten our food, which includes Mayur Saab and Nikku Saab and the drivers and everybody else.
And in fact, even in the evening in the rooms, we used to drink all together.
Yeah. But in Nagaland, yeah, so that was really refreshing. And, the forest, you're absolutely right, because such thick, lush forest, you'd expect thousands and hundreds of thousands of animals to be there. I mean, there are still legends of how there are tigers in the hills of Nagaland still, and how there are leopard everywhere and lots of animals. But, every time you sort of come near an area, you just hear everything go quiet, including the insects. You just imagine their eyes widening and saying, "Oh, the Nagas are here, keep quiet." And everything becomes silent.
कल रात रॉकी साहब आए थे जंगल में, खूब सारी भयानक चीखें, फिर सन्नाटा.
But we went to this place called the Naga Bazaar in Kohima. It was, I remember, it was a lovely day with crisp sunlight, and I sat next to this shop which had cages, which I thought were hamsters, but I don't know. I've been told there's something, some large rodent. It was a furry rodent, and it's like the Azadpur Mandi in Delhi, except that there's a tin shed. It's not as big. It's maybe 1/5 the size of that tin shed. But there are lots of shops there, many of them leafy vegetables, But next to like something like beans in a katori, there will be caterpillars in a katori, like next to each other. And those caterpillars keep trying to escape, and the shopkeeper will keep putting those caterpillars back in, which apparently are good for arthritis. Then there'll be frogs, which are there in these big, क्या कहते हैं वो white जिसमें दारू रखते हैं chill करने के लिए, वो paper type ना, what is that material called?
A thermocol box.
Correct. With frogs, you want frogs, they'll fill one polythene with frogs which are live trying to get out.
The little baby frogs. Yeah.
It was, and of course, what they say is one of the most healthiest thing. They get these wasp hives and
hornet grubs, Niku. Hornet. Those were hornets. It was a hornet. They were hornet grubs. Yeah.
So what all did we try there, boys?
So the Naga Bazaar is primarily what you'd call a wet market. Now, this is, of course, in the days of Corona, wet markets have become very popular, but but the Naga Bazaar still continues, and it is a wet market, albeit it's one of the cleanest wet markets I'll find, because they don't do stacking of animals. So everything is lying separately, and they wash and clean very regularly. But you have people who have gone out into the forest and, harvested and gathered whatever they could find. So I remember while walking up to the Naga Bazaar, and we were walking because it's at one of the high points of the city. It's right on the ridge of a hill, and everything else is below that. So while we were walking up, the first indication I had that we had got to Naga Bazaar was a woman selling large snails. I don't know if you remember this, guys.
Yes,
that was the first one we saw. Yeah, she had about 200 snails in a big box, and she was selling them, and they were crawling all over the place, and people were buying them because apparently they're a delicacy. And everything has medicinal value there. There's nothing without medicinal value. Mayur, did you cure any of your ills? Because you have many. There was a corkscrew worm that goes into your head and clears out your brain. Which you and Niku, I saw buying quietly on the side.
And then stuffing it into our ear.
खाले बेटा खाले, जितना खाना खा ले, बहुत है यहाँ पे, बहुत है. पूरी जिंदगी लगे रहेगा, तभी तक पेट नहीं भरेगा तेरा. खा.
No, Rocky, you're right. One thing, it was so clean. It was cleaner than the sabzi markets around my house. It was a really clean market.
Yeah, it was. And
you couldn't smell shit. You couldn't smell anything. A, because everything was alive, so I guess it wasn't rotting. B, it just wasn't filthy at all. I remember sitting next to those cages and soaking in the sun and looking at the valley below, because you're right, it was on top of the hill.
Correct.
Yeah, but there are also very precious items over there. I mean, I remember this shop that was selling only dried eels, small eels that had been completely dried and coiled around like snakes. And they must have been worth a fortune, because I asked her for like one. Yeah, so I said, how much is this for? There were 3 eels sort of co-joined together and dried. And she said they were for 500 rupees. Now, either because she saw my face and she realized I'm probably royalty from somewhere, or she realized this guy's a real idiot, let's just raise the price on him. But it was expensive. I mean, it wasn't cheap.
Right. And
there was some of the hornet grubs were very expensive.
Yes, they're very good for children, right?
Correct. But they also had those, do you remember those really large, 2-foot long, thick eels that were like swimming backwards in the water? Kuchia, they called them. Those were not that expensive. And pork, of course, is
pork is everywhere.
Super popular, super cheap. In fact, I remember when you guys were all in the market, I had wandered off and there was this little street there, and this truck pulled up and they unloaded about 15 very, very large hogs and pigs. They'd already cleaned out from the inside. And I remember the guy was just picking them up and then like literally draping them on his shoulder. And because it was cut, so he was almost wearing it like a coat, and then he'd stagger up and then he'd put it in and then he'd go out again. So like he did this 15 times, wearing a piggy coat to transport it.
Wow, getting piggy hugs. That's quite something. Yeah, that's quite something. Yeah, those hornets are really good for children. If you let one off on a child, the child will run and get so much exercise until it... So one way or the other, everything over there is very good for you. But yeah, hornet grubs, I don't know what they're called in Nagaland, but I think they're called borol in
Borol, yeah.
Borol is, it's a delicacy, and apparently it's very delicious, and you can see that. The only problem is when you sell hornet grubs, then hornets come and try and take them back to the nest, and they're filled with hornets. And these are large ones, not the super giant hornets you get in Eastern Asia, but big enough, much bigger than the ones we get in Delhi and areas like that. But anything else that was fascinating? I found the frogs to be fascinating. I mean, there was a tub, like a big thermocol box that must have been filled with water, and maybe 5,000 frogs. And for 20 rupees, you would get a mug full of frogs. And when I say mug full, I literally mean like a big mug filled with water and frogs and put into a plastic bag. And there must have been like 30, 40 frogs in that packet.
Yeah, in fact, we have very nice photographs. If you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll see what it looks like.
Yeah, and when I bought that, I remember I said, so how do you cook these? And the woman said, if you want to, and everybody speaks English, almost everybody speaks English, which is very nice. And she said, if you want to cook them, then you put them cold water, put it on gas, because from cold to hot, they not jump out. If you put in hot water, they jump out. If you put frogs into cold water and slowly boil the water, they get comfortable and they get boiled and they don't even realize when they're cooked. But if you put them in hot water, they'll jump out. So as they say, as the wise men say, slowly, slowly, catchy monkey, slowly, slowly, cookie froggy.
And so Article 370 was abrogated, but Amit Shah quickly clarified that Article 371 will not be, because that gives special privileges to many states in the Northeast. So because because they will obviously rebel, but kya nahi sakte, frog ka example lete hai, to slowly, next article coming up.
Dheere, dheere.
But it's the only place where I saw Rocky chasing his food. So the final time we went there, and Rocky, please tell us how that tasted, because it smelled awful. Just for the record, I don't know, Mayur did eat there, very brave of him. I didn't even eat at that hotel. It was a really fancy hotel, and they laid out a meal that was really plush. And we ate at the regular dhaba types also. But the final time when they waited, and there was this big bowl of fancy, pupas and caterpillars and other something else, and one of crickets, and you could see the cricket or whatever it was. And Rocky had a bite. I could not eat at in that place. I said, I'll drive and we'll eat somewhere on the highway. I picked up fruit and my faithful Britannia, which is so good for my health, cakes. But before that, when we were shooting in the kitchen, one frog hopped out and it was hopping all over. I remember Rocky and Mayur chasing it. my lunch.
That was a very, very exotic meal. In fact, I think that was owned by that I think it was called the Grand Imperial and stuff. And they really laid it out for us. If you remember, at the end of that cooking sequence, when we finally were about to eat, Rocky had about 7 or 8 dishes on his table. I had 7 or 8 dishes on my table. I had 3 different types of rice. They had the green, very special green rice, which was called rolio or something. They had red rice. Rocky had 2 different types of worms. He had the frogs. He had fermented crab paste. I mean, I'll let him tell you. And I had that dish, which was basically, it was fermented greens with akhuni and yam and all mixed in there.
That was a
huge spread they put out for us.
It was visually really colorful and spectacular. And those bugs are so colorful. I don't know how the hell Rocky put it into his mouth. There was this fleshy, fat grub. It wasn't like a little sink grub. It was like a fat finger. It was like the size of a fat finger.
But as opposed to tasty-looking grubs, they were not tasty-looking grubs. So the tasty-looking ones are nice. No.
Rocky, one of them you liked, that longu, which was the reddish ones, which turned a little yellow, the thin ones. They had a slightly funny smell. But when you had those you liked. It was the other ones, the kelu, that you struggled with.
No, the kelu was the ones I liked. The kelu was normal. I mean, those are silkworm larvae, as best as I can tell. They're silkworms. And they're quite delicious and very popular and very numerous. So they're everywhere. But this particular one that we are talking about was very, very difficult. The silkworm are about half a finger length and they're nice and plump and yellowy and orangey. And when you cook them, they just dry up and crunch and they taste a little bit like corn or straw, unbelievably. But they're not bad to eat. I've eaten them on 5 or 6 occasions now and I sort of look forward to eating them. They're quite a nice taste. But the ones that we are talking about are the big white ones. I mean, they're like a finger and a half in length. And they're about as thick as 2 fingers. And Mayur, I think, described them best. As he said, outside is like the prawn shell, which no matter how much you chew, it doesn't break down. And inside it's custard. Thank you.
Inside it's custard. That's right. I remember him describing it. It's like custard inside.
Yeah. And we had a really brave crew that always sort of got on my case and said, if you can eat it, we can eat it too. We are better than you and we can eat more. And that was the time when we separated the men from the boys. So the whole crew, the big 3 there are 3 guys who would get on my case every time. And we offered it to them and all 3 took a bite. And I'm glad to say one threw up and the other 2 immediately spat out the worms because they just couldn't digest it. And then I, of course, said, listen, if anyone can eat these, I'll eat one because I don't know if they're meant to be eaten. And the Nagas sort of came up with a story. The Naga locals in the restaurant told me a story that these are only meant for royalty. When you cut down a tree, at the base of that tree are these white worms. And they can only be eaten by royalty. I don't know if I'm royalty, so I wasn't going to eat it because of that. I said, listen, you guys, if one of you takes a bite, I'll take a bite. And then finally, after about 10 minutes of arguing, one guy came and he took one bite of one worm, and then quickly went out and looked like he was throwing up all over the place. So I, of course, picked up one big fat worm and put it in my mouth and chewed it. And the horrible part is that you can keep chewing it, but it doesn't dissolve. I mean, it just breaks into this pieces of plastic that don't dissolve. It's like big chunks of metal plastic that doesn't break.
I remember the smell just sitting next to him and stuff. And no, but those they called them carpenter worms and they called them kelu. Earlier we thought there was some other name for kelu, but then when you clarified with the chef and the lady who they called her up and they checked, and she said that the white ones that you were eating, those were called kelu.
Now we shall go from this place in the Naga Bazaar to one of my favorite experiences. Well, two in Nagaland. One was this where the band was playing and they had really good confectionery. In all of Northeast, they have really good confectionery. They have these places that have pastries, patties, and croissant type things. I love those meals because I remember we used to go there early in the evening, and because of where they are on the longitude, it gets dark really quickly. It's like dark by 4. So they should actually have a different time zone. So it's lovely, these little cafes which have this kind of stuff. But the one place that I really liked was this really cool guy I'm talking about. I'm sure Rocky and Mayur will remember his name. He had a restaurant. He was a musician. He was one of the main dudes of Kohima. And his restaurant had the Naga chili pickle. He had other pickles with these little full chilies. Then he had another pickle with medium-sized chilies. And I loved, he made something very basic. And I just had that with the chilies there. I loved that meal. And the confectionaries of many towns in Nagaland are just really, really good.
His name was Teja Meru, and that place was called the Dream Cafe. It was on a hill. We drove all the way up, and then there's a guitar there in his cafe.
Yes.
And you can, if you want, you can pick it up. And apparently, if you're good enough, then other people will join in because they love their music. So I remember we tried the Naga King Chili, the Raja Mircha pickle there.
Yes, I remember because I loaded up about 4 or 5 bottles of pickle and got them to Delhi, and they kept me going for many lunches for the next few months. When my bland food used to be served to me, I said, "Don't worry, serve me all the bland food you want. I have got Teja Meru's pickles with me."
Naga pickle.
But they have amazing pastries and all. Rocky, did you try that? There were 2 or 3 places we went to.
Yeah, no, the Dream Cafe is a beautiful place. One, because it sort of faces the Kohima War Cemetery. It's just opposite the very, very famous Kohima War Cemetery, where in World War II the Nagas held off. There was a big battle there. But and I'm not going to get into the details of it. But when you look to the other side, there is a beautiful view of the valley below, and you can see all of it. So the cafe is really good. It's in a sort of a small mall sort of space where there are many shops. But Teja Meru's cafe, it's called the Dream Cafe, is really nice, and it's a sort of center of the music action. So every evening you'll have musicians coming and playing there. So they don't really focus on a strict menu. And I think I remember you just ate the noodles, Niku. You ate like Hakka noodles and some fried rice, which you were very happy with.
And yeah, that's right. Yes, you're right.
But it's excellent. But they serve up some really good pork dishes. You can have some momos there as well. I mean, we had some momos. They make a great cup of coffee, and it's one of those places where people would hang out. Like 10 or 12 years ago, Nagas had started going all over the country and working in different metros and making some money. Money was never a big deal in the Naga hills because people lived a very different life. It's only now when people have started working in big metros and setting up businesses all over the place, and even in Nagaland and around the Northeast and in the rest of India, they have now started taking back a lot of money into their cities. And so Kohima is now getting more and more modernized. And that's why Teja Meru's Dream Cafe was one of the first ones of its kind to open up. But now there are many apparently that do great coffee. You can have, good bars, nice food, good restaurants, good views. It's really changed Kohima over the last few years.
Which place was it, Mayur, where we stayed, where it was really nice, quaint little hotel, which must have been a big house at one point, like an L-shaped room. It was a very narrow room with a single bed, which is where I was, which overlooked this valley and had this veranda, old type. And I remember the manager there was sitting with me at the corridor overlooking the town in the evening, and there was, lights, and it was beautiful. The weather there is great. And I was talking to him about the feeling of alienation that many people, and this is also true for Arunachal, they do. It's not like the Kashmir angle that there is a hostility to India among many youths, but there was an indifference that, India didn't ever do anything for us, and it just left us to not keep pace with the kind of infrastructure development that the rest of India got. So there is a certain feeling of, we don't really care about the administration. This guy made the most startling thing. He said, yeah, in my tribe, if there's a disagreement, we'll go and kill that guy. Their tribe will come and kill two of us. And neither tribe will file a police complaint. They said, we'll resolve it at the tribal level. We don't want the Indian government getting involved. And I was like, dude, like that's kind of bizarre. I wonder if it's still like that. But I mean, he said this is true for many parts, not just of Nagaland, but many other tribal areas of the Northeast, that a problem we'll resolve at our tribal level, even if that requires violence. We will not even go to the administration. And he said there may be people who actually work with the administration, but even they will come and participate in this form of justice or resolution.
Well, yeah, I mean, getting justice out of the Indian system is quite difficult. I remember my, poor mother who was, a war widow living on her own, had to fight a court case for 12 years to get her house back. That was the only source of income. And the system just didn't do anything for her. So, it had to be done differently. But the point is that nobody ever gets justice in time enough. So where do you go if you want justice here? Not to the Indian system. I have no idea where you'll get it otherwise. But so that is one. And then secondly, I mean, who has the system done well by in India? I was talking to a friend the other day who was saying, we are a minority. We don't get enough appreciation from the system. We are in danger. So I was like, so who hasn't had a problem in India with the problems? I mean, it's not that if you're a majority, you don't have problems. The majority, in fact, has the biggest problems. The largest number of issues and fights and problems and unsolved matters lie with majorities, and then they move on to everybody else. So it doesn't matter which religion you are or which class you are or which caste you are. Sooner or later, the government has ignored you and left you alone and not given you anything. And that's the case all over the country. So the Nagas, of course, are no exception. They are also part of have got nothing, and nothing's been done for us by the government. And hopefully that will change, but it's just...
And the tribal identity is a very important primary identity they have. The primary identity is not a class, caste, religious identity. The primary identity is the tribal identity. And that is why there is this, we will take care of it at a tribe level.
Yeah, I mean, you live there, you live in that environment. Your only strength is your tribe. Where else are you going to go to find strength? It's not that, India is a country that provides immaculate law and great policing and there are no problems. Nothing illegal ever happens over here. But if something goes wrong with you and your sort of injustice is carried out against you, where do you go for justice? And that's the tribal identity is the only one that at least has people standing by you, and in no way am I encouraging this kind of behavior. I wish everybody followed the law and everybody, followed the constitution of the country, and then we would be a much better and easier country to live in. But yeah, I mean, everybody feels wrong by the government. Even Niku and his clan in Tamil Nadu feel very wrong by the government. And the whole Hindi thing is a problem. The whole Brahmin identity thing is a problem. And the whole North Indian thing is a problem. So everybody in India has got problems with everybody else except me. I have no problems with anyone. And if I have any problems with anyone, just come up to me next time and say, I'll give you one tight one, and then everything will be okay.
So, Mayur, what was the vegetarian experience of Nagaland like? And since you are a music lover of the rock and roll variety, did you enjoy the Hornbill Festival? Because that is considered the biggest festival, the musical festival. Now there have lots of new ones have come up, but it is one of the most well-known and respected festival for the sake of music.
Correct. My fondest memory of the approach of the people of Nagaland to vegetables comes from, we went to this place called the Aradura Spur Cafe. Remember, it was on this little hill and really nice, the Aradura Inn. The first time we went, there was a young girl who was the owner, and this was when we did the Homp fans. So our fans had invited us, and we went there. It was this beautiful place, a very nice sense of history. This was again, there was this Aradura Spur was where the Brits fought some battle. And Rocky asked him, what are you making? And she was rattling off these things. And I said, listen, don't the people of Nagaland like vegetables? They said, we love vegetables. They're really good for adding color to all the important meat dishes. And then they all had a laugh. And then the second thing I remember is those two fans of ours, I don't remember the names, but they were telling, so Rocky was asking them what is very, very popular and all. They said that in Nagaland, we love pork a lot. And especially around Christmas time, we eat a lot of pork. And they said, in fact, that is so well known that when pigs in Nagaland hear Christmas carols, they start crying because they know they're going to be on the menu soon. So, Aradura Spur Cafe it was called, yeah.
And the music scene, because I know Shillong, we'll get to Shillong when you get to Meghalaya. That also has an amazing music scene.
Yeah.
But Nagaland also has a phenomenal music scene. What was that?
Fantastic.
And listen, while we are on the Aradura Inn, there's a place called, right next to it is attached the Aradura Inn, which is a really clean place. So if you guys are looking for a nice place to stay in, where you'll get some decent food, albeit, very spicy and very Naga, then you should go there. And I remember the names of the boys who had come to join us over there. There was Ashimo and Langsho. And they were the ones who were sort of making all those poke jokes along with us. So we were feeling quite happy.
And then we went for that, the final of the festival. They take the music festival. If I remember correctly, the prize for the winning band was 4 lakh rupees.
Yeah. A lot of money today, even more back then.
Yeah. And we saw more people in that stadium than we saw ever on the streets of Kohima or Dimapur at any given time, man. You remember that stadium was packed.
Man. There were more people there than for the string concert that I went to a decade ago here in Delhi.
and super talented. I mean, even when we were growing up, very often our friends from the Northeast were the ones that were like the really good musicians. Even in Delhi University, if you remember, they love their music. They have it in their blood and their soul. I wonder if it's their diet and everything they eat, because they also have a super healthy diet, just by virtue of the fact that they live in a place where even now, I don't know how much electricity reaches, and also all the smoking, the pickling, the fermentation that they do, which now in the 21st century, every nutritionist anywhere in the world is saying that this is the best thing for your gut flora and fauna, is to have fermented food and pickled food. Here, it's been a very natural part of the diet. I mean, they're using bamboo to stuff fish in and cook it next to ashes. They're pickling stuff. They're smoking everything. They pork. The fermented paste, the akhuni. So I wonder if that has anything to do with the fact that they just...
Also, I'm sure it's genetic. Just so it's such an outdoorsy life, and like Rocky said, the history, in fact, of their wars. I had later done a documentary on the headhunters.
Correct.
There's, I think, about 6 or 10 of them alive who would actually get back heads as trophies.
Correct.
And did an interview with some of them. I mean,
they're beautiful tattoos, no? They're beautiful all over. The blue tattoos they have, and you can see it in their eyes. They're like...
In fact, that documentary is there on Newslaundry. I'll put a link on it in the newsletter. But before we come to the other food and any other experience, Rocky and Mayur, you will share with us. I have a couple of emails. So this one says, "Hey guys, wanting to write for some time now. I've been watching the show since it began and don't think I missed any episode of Hom. The food and travel urge in me was so much amplified by your show. Have watched many others with perhaps better production value and stuff, but you guys, jo maza aap mein hai, wo aata hai, wo kahan." Thank you. Really,
thank you.
So, just like maa ke haath ka khana, it is flavored with madness of Rocky and Mayur and feels very organic. Eagerly waiting for you guys to hit the road and tempt us to do the same whenever that might be possible. Cheers. Postscript, Abhinandan, I really like you showing... Oh no, okay, now he's talking about someone I interviewed and he's saying I should do mean things to that person.
Okay.
No, bro. We keep it simple and non aggressive, but yeah, some people are...
Abhinandan, you tell him, because as we all know, facts are not facts.
So thanks, brother. Thanks for writing in. You're right. Once we hit the road again, we are still figuring out the mechanics of that, but we do want to break that drive in cities and towns with this community of hompers that we will create by the end of this show and by the end of the lockdown, so we can get together actually and have a meal like every 6 days where we make a stop. So we'll figure something out like that. So yes, we shall hang and exchange stories. Wo time bhi aayega, apna time aayega.
And the reason why, I think one of the reasons why people really enjoy the show is because, it doesn't really delve into the problems of the world, half of which are made up, or in fact, almost all are made up. There are very few problems that we have, and they're all resolvable easily. But the reason why I think people like that show is because it's just sort of two guys traveling, having fun, talking to people respectfully, hearing what they have to say, passing on their message, eating some food, just hanging out with a bunch of guys and having fun. And that's it. And that's all the format of the show is.
And I think a very important component of, Highway on My Plate, some of the other shows we had very strict. We had storyboarded what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. We had planned everything. In Highway on My Plate, we followed a very human curiosity. Like if we saw something while driving, we said, "Wo kya hai? Ruk ke dekhte hain zara." Then we'd go and say, "Acha, kya kar rahe hain? Acha, ye kar rahe ho? Yeah, cameras lao." Yeah, this is quite interesting. Then in Orissa, I remember when we were driving and these bunch of kids were jumping in and jumping out, and we said, what are you jumping and jumping? They said, nothing, we're just jumping in and jumping out because it's hot.
Oh, from the bridge into the water.
From that bridge.
Yeah.
So, we just followed human curiosity because the highway is full. In fact, I'm not sure which state it was. We will send you that in the photographs. We were driving and there was this wall with this...
The Bakasura head or the...
Bakasura head with these horns. I was like, what the fuck is that? Then we stopped there and we did a sequence. So we followed human curiosity. And the two most special things, I think, are human curiosity and common sense. And both of these are things that we tend to forget in the heavily rehearsed, rehashed, and contrived worlds and lives that we have started leading. And Homp was basically, the ingredients were human curiosity and what's the second thing I said?
Common sense.
Common sense.
Don't worry
Not
about
a sense
it.
of memory. Short-term memory is clearly not important.
I've spoken to a lot of people and a lot of young people who are sort of making it big in Bollywood and television. And a lot of them turn to me and say, that show changed the way Indian television is viewed and shot. And it before that, it was all very sort of staccato. It was very rehearsed. It was very, hum aapse ye kehna chahte hain, that kind of television. But you guys just sort of changed the dynamic on its head. But, while I'm happy if that happened and, if that's how people look at it, I'm very happy they look at it like that. But we weren't really trying to do anything, we're just sort of some guys out on the road having some fun and sharing it with all of you. And I think that's, the rest is just how beautiful India is and how much variety there is out there. So it was quite easy for us.
Amazing. By the way, I was watching, we'll talk about this when we get to Himachal episode. It was coming on telly the other day. My nephew's sat in on one of these recordings. He had no idea of the show. He said, sounds like so much fun. Does it still come on TV? I said, it may check. So they were running the hills.
Yeah.
And at the Sharma Dhaba, Rocky said, and while we're eating this, we get to eat the leftovers. It's the crew that eats first. Look at them. These fat, unhealthy people who are looking at my food hungrily. And the camera just turns to the crew who's shooting and, everyone looking at each other. So, there was no that you can't show the cameraman, you can't show the sound recordings. Very often. So that was fun. So one more quick mail, boys, and then I'll come back to you and tell me your stories and then we can wind up. Because we are recording this one in the afternoon and both the gentlemen have commitments to the family. They're teaching their children, believe it or not. God bless them.
My commitment is lunch, which will happen soon. That's my primary commitment.
Aditya says, hey guys, fellow Homper, thanks for this podcast. It has been really amazing so far and I look forward to every episode and it's quickly becoming my favorite podcast. Second only to Awful and Awesome. Oh, Rajshri said, we'll get her also. We'll do a joint podcast once. I'm waiting for your episodes which will cover Kanpur and Gujarat. Well, Kanpur is done. No, that's the one that's going to come next. Today, Kashmir dropped. Kanpur will come next. And then Gujarat is a spectacular episode, of course. I'm a samosa connoisseur. Okay. And I'd like to know which is the best samosa you guys have had in your journeys all over the country. For me, it's Pappu Samosewala in Kanpur, followed by a shop that leads to the Marine Drive railway station in Bombay. And I also like the tiny aloo matar samosa made by the Jalebi Wala and Dariba in Old Delhi. I even started an online petition several years ago for McDonald's to introduce a Mac samosa, but I only got 32 petitioners supporting me. Lol, sad life. I don't know. This is some millennial thing I don't get. Anyway, thank you guys for this amazing podcast. Do let me know when I can subscribe to your newsletter. Well, you can click on the link. Wherever you listen to this podcast, there'll be a link below. You can subscribe by clicking on that link or writing to us at homp2020@gmail.com. Boys, samosa.
Yeah, I think the best one that I ever had was at the Army Golf Club in Dholakwa in Delhi. They used to make an unbelievable keema samosa with a very, very soft crust. Now, if you want to have really good samosas, you'll have to go to UP. UP is the home of the keema samosa. Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, these are the places where you get the most incredible keema samosas. And of course, if you're going to go vegetarian, then Bihar has some great samosas, as does UP. But I'm not the right guy to talk about that. Mayur, where's the good samosa?
Yeah, I agree with this guy. Actually, surprisingly, the place in Dariba Kalan he's talking about, I suspect he's talking about the old and famous Jalebi Wala because he's basically known for his jalebi with rabdi, but he also does these really nice matar samosas. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it's just that everybody goes there and you don't. So, but remember eating there 2 or 3 times. I love his samosas. And actually, round the corner from where Rocky and I used to live, Rock, do you remember the old Mithas? He used to have very good rasmalai and he used to have really good samosas at one time. Of course, that place is shut now. So
yeah, no doubt. But there are some weird ones like the noodle samosa we ate at Preeti Zinta's college, just outside her college canteen.
Simla.
outside St. Bede's, Simla, there's a Lucky Ka Dhaba that serves
I
noodle
remember.
samosa, which was horrible.
Horrible. No, the best samosa I've had, both veg and the keema samosa, is at Nanny's in Dehradun. This I'm talking about the late 80s, early 90s. There was a confectionery called Nanny's that used to make samosas in the evening. And both the veg samosa and the keema samosa is the best I've ever had. So yeah, that's my answer. And finally, Prabjot says, he says he bought the Amazon ebook on Amazon for part 1, but the second part is not available on Amazon, so please make it available. So before Rocky and Mayur promise you that, what we are saying is, once this community is big enough, there will be the book of mother of all books, the part 3. But until then, Rocky, Mayur, can you please make book 2 available online?
Yeah, we'll try our best. Yeah. Book 2 is available in print right now. I think that's why they haven't put it on ebooks. Book 1 sold out. I think it was the 20th, 21st print. And as always, because we make a lot, we don't make too much noise, and we don't sort of know the who's who, and we don't have contacts in the right places and hobnob and rub shoulders with the big people in media and press and Bollywood, etc. There's not really too much of a fuss about what we do. We just do it quietly. We're like the assassins of television. Nobody knows where we came from. Nobody knows where we go. They just know that we created one hell of a mess while we were there.
Like Kung Fu Pandas. we are the Kung Fu Pandus.
The Kung Fu Pendus, and everybody knows us because we are like 007 Panda. We eat shoots and leaves.
So guys, give me one more good story from Nagaland before we say goodbye to our wonderful viewers, listeners, or whatever you want to call them.
Go on, Mayur, one good story from Nagaland. I mean, there are so many in Nagaland. Yeah.
My God, there are many. I mean, we haven't even talked about trying the Raja Mirch and all, but I remember this really cute one. We were there, and I think this is when we were there for Hornbill episode. In fact, we've hardly talked about our experiences at the Hornbill. We should talk about that.
Go for it.
Yeah.
We went to this place called Ching Song, which was at the crossroads, and this guy did Naga gentleman. He wanted to promote tribal food. And Rocky said, come on, I'm going to take you to a place where you'll get really nice vegetables. And we went there, and it was at this central circle. And it had a really attractive Naga lady who was the traffic cop. She was in the center, and she was blowing a whistle and directing traffic. And Rocky refused to move. He's like, it's been a long time since a really pretty girl. And she's wearing a uniform. She's whistling at me. I said, no, she's not whistling at you. She's whistling because there's traffic. She said, no, she's looking at me. She's whistling. I said, yes, she's whistling at you because you're standing in the middle of the road and you're going to get run down.
Oh, man,
And we kept cutting to shots of her, and she was like smiling away, and she kept blowing her whistle.
Yeah, she was stunning, man. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always very nice when girls whistle at you. Even if they don't, you can just claim it. I mean, what's the harm?
Yeah.
Your happiness lies inside you, remember, not with external factors.
Yeah. But listen, after that, I think Rocky should take us to the Hornbill Festival. I mean, we have some fantastic stories from there. We should spend at least 10 minutes.
But even that restaurant was quite incredible. I remember there was an armadillo hide on the outside. As soon as you went in,
Correct.
there was a big armadillo hide there, and then there were a couple of pangolin hides as you climbed up the stairs.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to remember, like the commandos, like the Indian Army commandos, the Nagas have lived off the land forever, and living off the land, that's what it means. So whether you have to eat insects or snakes or eels or frogs or whatever else you can find, you eat that, and the commandos know how to do it. And that sort of becomes easy and more acceptable when I put it like that. But I'll say this, I tried to eat grasshoppers in Nagaland. That's where I first ate them. And I quite enjoyed them. And I was at a picnic with my wife in Uttarakhand, lying in a beautiful meadow. And we were sitting down, and, she was reading, and I was lying right next to her and reading my book. And a grasshopper jumped on my chest. So I just whacked it, pulled off the wings and the legs and the head, and then ate the body. And she was like, did you just eat a grasshopper? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, that's disgusting. And I was like, no, it's quite nice. It tastes like fresh grass and corn. Try one. So yeah, my eating habits have changed, all thanks to Nagaland. And in fact, we have a friend who has a beautiful Naga restaurant in Delhi. It's called the Zuku, the tribal kitchen. And Zuku is it's just next to Fab India near Vasant Kunj. So you should get down there if you want to really try some Naga cuisine. It's absolutely fantastic. But yeah, I mean, Nagaland is sort of the land of festivals. As you drive in, the gate that Mayur was talking about says, welcome to Nagaland, the land of festivals. And the biggest one now, because of government sort of encouragement, is the Hornbill. I mean, it is the biggest festival, right, Niku?
It is, yes, absolutely, by far.
Yeah, we did an interview with the gentleman at that time who was the head of tourism, and his explanation was that because we have so many tribes, and because we are the land of festivals, every month there's a festival here. And he said, what we did was we thought of this idea, said if we do the Hornbill Festival, then it gives in one place and at one specific time of the year, it gives an opportunity for visitors from India and all over the world to come and experience the culture of Nagaland all in one shot. And he said that was the whole idea behind it. In the beginning, I think there was like 1,000 odd people that went, but every year it's been growing in popularity. It's a fantastic place to go and to see all the tribes that come there for their dances, for their culture, for their food, for their thing. And do you remember meeting the Cognacs, Rocky, and all the stuff you got up to with them?
Yeah, that's a really fun tribe here. The Cognacs are the guys who, so the Hornbill Festival is laid out like the map of Nagaland, and each tribe has their center at the point where they would naturally be on the map of Nagaland. So it's very interesting to see, as you walk through, you can get an idea of the layout of Nagaland and which tribe lives where. Correct. So the Cognacs are right up on top, the furthest away. And they sort of make these muzzle loaders, these guns, and they're incredible because I was sitting with them and I said, so what do you use when you want to shoot a bird? And they pulled out these syringes, hypodermic needles, and they were like, we put 4 of these and let blast. And one of them knocks the bird down. And I was like, and if you have a bigger animal that you want to shoot, and they pulled out pieces of metal. I mean, square pieces, rectangular pieces, round pieces. It's incredible. They just put anything down the barrel of that gun, pack it with powder, and they let go. And they are great hunters. I mean, it's fabulous. And I remember beating the drum with them and getting into the who is the greatest warrior contest. You guys remember that?
Yeah, they had that first. They had that one thing, and this is all part of their of some of the events. I mean, they have events where the young men and women from each tribe dress up and they do all these traditional dances. And remember, in Nagaland, they have dances for everything, for change of season, for wedding, for going to war, for celebrating the harvest. So they have that, but then they also have these competitions to see who's a cooler warrior. And the one that we were going was the one where they were picking out boiling hot eggs from that boiling hot water, and they were peeling them and eating them. And then after that, they got like really this because Rocky said, I want to compete and stuff. They thought it was funny. They had those pieces of wood that they were like putting in the fire, and then they were bringing it out and they were rubbing it on their hands, and they're like, here you go. And of course, Rocky, the mad Surdy, is like, fine, you think you're Naga warriors, I will show you what a mad Surdy can do. So instead of rubbing it, he took a bite out of it.
नहीं ये गलत चीज है, ये मुंह में पान वाली नहीं है.
After that, the Naga guys were like, okay.
No, I mean, it was fun. But I mean, the contest started with, physically it was no contest because, I'm a large person and these guys are not that large. So it started with some drum beats, which we, of course, managed. I played the dhol. I used to practice playing the dhol. And as Khalsa College, Delhi will tell you, I used to go down there and play the dhol for the Bhangra team. So the dhol went along well. Then they put the hand in boiling water and picked out an egg and ate it. So I did the same. Then they went to the fire and took out this log and rubbed it over themselves. So I was like, well, I like my hair on my arms as it is. It took me a long while to grow it. So I just took a big bite off the burning stick and chewed it and swallowed it. And they just looked at me like I was mad because they were like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? I have a lot of respect from the tribals at least among the Cognac tribe now.
By God, he was like, all this rubbing and all is just foreplay, baby. If you really want to get down to it, you got to eat it.
But speaking of hair on the arms, that's one thing you guys may have noticed. No person at a tandoor ever has hair on his arms and very few on his face as well. So make a note of that. So on that note, we shall say goodbye on this episode. We shall be back next episode. Let's go take a dive into the south to my home state, my motherland of Tamil Nadu. Mind it. My mother comes from village of Tirunelveli in Tamil Nadu. And it was lovely going there. I remember when we went there, you'll get the whole story, but it is very famous for one halwa, and we finally found it in Tirunelveli ka famous halwa.
Correct.
Before we go and give you the food court, I would like to remind you once again, be a part of this community of people who will get together using Hive My podcast. Many of you said, don't call us hompers, but let's see what name we can come up with. Become a part of this community when we're a few thousand big, and this horrible time, curse of Corona is behind us and we can all get out there. We shall make a trip all along India again and hopefully meet some of you as we do that. And we shall make that show all together. So let's hope we can do that, because until we can do that and we can hit the highway, we will bring the highway to you. On that note, guys, let's get the food cooked.
Yes. Okay. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first if you like.
Okay.
Go.
An unforgettable land which drives along ridges and stunning valleys. Makes you wish you were in the car with your lover and not kung fu pendus like these.
Silkworms, kelus, snails, and tripe. The food of Nagaland is delicious, even though it almost always smells overripe.
And suspicious.
Whether you're eating crickets, worms, dog meat, or anything else you can be assured it will never be bland, because they put a lot of deadly chilies and they make really deadly food in Nagaland.
So,
And with that terrible poetry, we will catch you again pretty soon in 3 days. And remember, guys, take it easy. Don't get too serious about life. This is a fun podcast just to sort of relive the memories and have a few laughs at ourselves and other people. And that's what we do best. And join in and have a few laughs, or sulk and don't. It's up to you.
and whatever city or town you're in, make sure no one starves. And if you can help it, help any local organization in your city that is helping feed the migrant laborers, the stranded, those who have no other source of food. We are working on a report on newslaundry on all the work many organizations are doing, and soon that report will be up. So we will keep adding to cities where there are organizations that are working to feed people. So in the spirit that we would like to do this podcast in, and we believe we should share what we can, do get involved with those organizations and see if you can sponsor any meals for them. Hopefully that piece should be out by the end of this week, and we will keep adding different cities and towns as we get to know the organizations that are helping feed the hungry. Thank you all. Thank you, gentlemen. You can go back to your duties for the day.
Goodbye.
See you, boys. Catch you soon.
Bye-bye.
All the News Laundry podcasts are available on Stitcher, iTunes, and any other podcast platform.
Please subscribe to News Laundry. Help us keep news independent. To catch all our podcasts on news, pop culture, current affairs, and sport, visit newslaundry.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.